Welcome, folks. We're going to be getting started in just a few minutes. Folks who are watching the recording, so for the folks who are watching the recording, welcome. We're glad you're tuning in as well. We're going to give folks who are watching live just another moment to arrive while we're waiting for those folks. Would love to hear from you in the chat. Let's get some energy moving for the course. Two things, if you want to share your LinkedIn and connect, as well as you might share something that you're proud of yourself for creating recently. I'm also going to drop a link into the chat. You'll find that link here on the screen, as well as a QR code. If that QR code is too small, um, bear with me. And the next slide is going to be a bit bigger, but we're going to have some worksheets for this course. So I also recommend that you have a pen, notebook, paper nearby. You can use it digitally. It's going to be a PDF that you can download, or you can reference that in your own notebook and just follow along with the worksheets. So that link for these worksheets is in the chat. As I mentioned, I'll also display it a bit bigger here. And if someone can give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat just to confirm that you can access that. Actually, I just realized I messaged it to myself, but there it goes out to everyone. There's the link in the chat. And with that, I think we're going to begin. So I will share this link throughout. It's one document. It has all of the worksheets that we're going to use for the course, but just in case people leave that page or find themselves joining later, this is what the worksheet looks like. So you can go ahead at the top of your page, just write down your name and maybe just scribble a little bit to give yourself some permission to make this a little bit less than perfect. All right. You're probably wondering, who am I? Why am I here? What are we here for? I think I have a lot of lessons I can offer today, but I'm here mostly as an expert, not to tell you what to do, but as a facilitator to support you in reflecting and imagining and starting to generate your own version of change. So until a few years ago, I worked about 12 years in tech startups. I have some people saying it is working, some folks saying it's not working. Um, I'll go back, I'll drop that link there again and go here as well. I can also give you the plain version link, which might work as well. Just make sure that's visible for everyone. Hopefully, Yenny, you can get that to work. I will be showing the questions as we go as well. So if you're not able to access the worksheet, you will still get the information. So yeah, until about a few years ago, I had worked for 12 years in startups in the US and Germany, and I had an engineering background, and then that converged with localization about 10 years ago. And I had the privilege to hire Alfonso, who's the creator and CEO of TranslaStars, and he was a great support as we integrated localization into our business processes. And I continued to be really humbled by folks in the linguistic community, and I'm also an advocate for lifelong learning. So it only makes sense that 2 years ago I started to transition my own career to being a self-employed coach and a teamwork facilitator. And that's why I'm here to offer this course with TranslaStars, because I work with a lot of professionals who are driven to move forward, but maybe feel stuck, kind of treading water. And my coaching supports those folks to gain confidence, clarity, and calm. I also work with teams and business leaders to manage change and build workplaces, I think, where people really thrive. I think that work doesn't work for a lot of people, and I want to support a world where work works for us. So, in partnering with TranslaStars to create this course, it's really my hope, and I think our hope, that it's a free 2-hour session, but we want to support you in finding the change that you want to embrace and maybe not some things that you won't change. So I hope that you will also see the value in embracing change. And with that, we're going to begin. We're here today to talk about your career for this year, maybe. You get to define that timeline. There's going to be a lot of reflective exercises. There's going to be very little information in terms of me telling you answers, but this is to support you to be resilient and intentional and self-led. So whether you're here live, welcome, or watching the recording, welcome as well. I really want to acknowledge you for showing up, for taking this time for yourself. Um, there's no question that the localization industry is moving at the speed of light and there's a lot of change. And in that, pausing to take some time for yourself to plan is a pretty radical act that I want to appreciate. A few disclaimers. This is your space. This is about you. This is about your answers. I don't have your answers. And there's also no right answer. So we might want to free ourselves from the idea that we have to find a right and a wrong. Um, there's also not necessarily a right time. You get to decide what that looks like for you. I'll honestly say that I'm not someone who, at the start of January, is taking a bunch of new energy and coming up with new ideas. I prefer to do that a little bit later in the year. Um, you get to decide when the right time is for you, and I'm hoping to challenge you to make sure that you're not delaying and procrastinating action. I also have a lot of metaphors toward localization and translation built into this workshop. They're not perfect. It's just meant to bring us along the journey together with some frameworks that might be similar. But if the metaphors and the framing of how we're doing the exercises and the titles that I'm giving them feel off, let's let that be okay and focus on the questions themselves. Um, there's going to be also some silence, and that's for you. Uh, we're going to just allow that space for thinking and allow yourself to embrace the maybe a little bit of discomfort of questions and embracing the unknown. So where are we going to go? This is our roadmap. We're going to start with some reflection, looking kind of at the past, and we're going to think of that as kind of our source text. And then we're going to ground ourselves in the present and assess our current context. What is the context that we are translating, that we're working in? And looking toward the future, we're going to do a bit of a transcreation exercise for 2026 and move ideas into action. Along the way, you're already here, so you've followed my first kind of rule of or guideline, which is showing up. I want to encourage you to play and participate. If you're here, you can use the chat. Uh, I, for one, want to respect confidentiality, and I hope you will as well too. When people bring something in personal, that makes it a stronger experience for all of us. And I hope that you feel encouraged to bring curiosity rather than judgment. You will have access to all of the slides. If you're joining live, they will be shared after the course. The worksheets are already shared. You can feel free to take notes in any way that suits you. And let's go for part one. So this is about looking into the past and the present. We're going to do, like I said, source analysis, context. We're going to extract some terminology, look at your translation memory and what is going to be your metrics of quality. If you have questions along the way, feel free to interrupt in the chat. I'll do my best to monitor that and follow along. And first, I have a question for you. So this is going to be on the Mentimeter platform. You can join if you want to scan this with your phone or go to menti.com and type in this code here. The first question is, what is a word that comes to mind when you think about your career in 2026? I'll drop another link in the chat for everyone if you prefer to go there. And I'm going to start presenting this. So you can scan this code, enter the number here at menti.com. I'm on the wrong window. We want to start with the start of the course, not the end of the course. Please make sure you're on the right page. It might have sent you to the wrong place. What's a word or a phrase that's coming to your mind when you think about your career at the moment? You see some answers popping up here. We have uncertainty, unknown, growing, creation, confusion, change, stimulating, movement, stagnation, effort. Just take a moment and take a breath with that. Just let this word arrive. Let yourself sit with what's present, the right mindset, creation. Good. We can sit also with one another, really acknowledging what's showing up for different individuals in our professional industry, what we're thinking about. So that's really where we are. You can continue sharing if you haven't already, but I'm going to go back to our materials here and invite us to take the first worksheet. So we're going to go beyond just the first page and the first exercise. Here's that link again. Is going to be about source and context analysis. The worksheet looks like this. We're going to have a few minutes to explore where did you start? What chapter are you focusing on, reflecting back on, that may or may not be the calendar year 2025? And what do you think about that? Where did you start? What was happening in your life, your work at the start of this time period? What goals, ideas did you have? What intentions did you have? If I'm able, I'm going to set a timer for us and we're going to spend about 4 minutes on this exercise. So go ahead and start to answer these questions. I'm not able to set the timer here in Zoom, but I will keep track of time for us. We've got about 1 more minute to just make some notes about this past year, this past chapter, and specifically the starting point. What was going on maybe 1 year ago for you? All right. Now, if that wasn't enough time for you, you're going to have all of these questions, all of these worksheets to continue on your own. Um, but I want to, for the purposes of our time together, move forward into the next exercise, which is actually at the bottom of that same page if you're looking at the worksheet. So we're moving from source and context analysis here into the terminology extraction. And the idea here is to choose 8 areas of your life or your work that are really feel critical and essential to your glossary right now. So I'm going to have some words on the screen. You can pick from these, or you might consider narrowing this to your specific career and your context. You might put things like language skills, technological proficiency, cultural understanding, your client relationships. So for now, we're just going to choose 8 areas that feel important for you. Take a few minutes. I'm going to set another timer for 3 minutes just to reflect on what feels important for you. We've got another minute or so. If you've finished early, you might also, you're welcome to share in the chat, especially if you have some ideas that have come up for you that aren't on this list. What feels strong and important to you right now? Combination of past, present, and upcoming. All right, we're going to move into the next exercise. So we've started with acknowledging where you started. Now we've acknowledged what feels important to you. And we're going to be building on these things that you've already identified in the next steps. The next exercise is going to invite us to look a bit more in depth at the past year, the past chapter, to reflect on what really made a difference. And so we're moving to the next worksheet. It's page 3 of 10 in the PDF, and we're calling this our translation memory. So this is where, again, I'm stretching the metaphors a little bit, but we're going to look at 2 categories, challenges or losses and wins. And we're comparing this to like algorithms that compare results in a translation memory. When did you get really what you wanted? Those are going to be your 100% matches. And when did things not line up as you had hoped? and those might be fuzzy or totally non-matches. So you can do this with your calendar, a notebook. You might look through photos in your phone. Just consider some different areas of your life, client projects, your tool proficiency, professional relationships, and explore these questions here. What required more effort? Where did you feel stuck, frustrated, not get the results that you want? And where did things seem to work out really well? So we're on this exercise here. If you're looking at the worksheet, we're going to have 8 minutes for this, and I'm going to set another timer. Take some time to really look back at this chapter. Now we still have a few more minutes, but I want to do a little intermission to remind you that our brains have a negativity bias, and it might be easier for you to identify the challenges and what didn't go so well. So, with these last few minutes, make sure you're putting some wins, that extra mental effort on what went well. What can you feel proud of? We have about 1 more minute. We might use that time to make sure you've also zoomed out and looked at different areas, work and life, not just your career. And I want to remind you that if you find a lot of fuzzy matches, they happen to everyone. Challenges are one of the ways that we grow. It's part of being human. And you're still awesome. You're still you. You're still worthy of recognition and rest and success and growth. Uh, Even if you feel that there's lots of challenges in your past or recent history. And we're going to take a moment just to kind of check our mental dialogue there. And I've named this, so to say, linguistic interference. So we're going to pause for a moment. Um, in localization, of course, there's a distinction between the literal translation, and we might call those the facts, the pure word for word, and the transcreation, where we're needing to interpret. But our brain also can interpret our reality, and we call those facts and stories. So spend just a few minutes. I'm going to set another timer for 2.5 minutes, thinking about where you might be having a story that's overlaying on top of the facts, and that may not be helpful. You may be thinking, well, I lost 20% of the fact might be that you lost 20% of some billable work, but the story becomes that you're obsolete or you've been robbed of your career, and those are not the same thing. So pay attention to what actually happened and where you might be putting an unhelpful story there. Mm. All right. We're wrapping up this reflective exercise. We're also going to shift from the past toward the present and the future. So we've started to kind of gather, where did we start? What happened in the last year? What are we making of it? Where might we be? Where might our perception be uh, overcast on the reality? And the next thing we're going to do is move into the present and think about, how are things right now? And to do that, we're going to use the very terms that you identified. This is another tool where you can use this actually quite often, and I use this in my coaching work with clients. We're going to rename it. It's usually called the Wheel of Life, and we're going to call this a quality scorecard. So take the 8 terms. You might have a little bit more, a little bit fewer than 8. And you can lay those around the wheel. So we're on page 4 of the worksheet. It looks like this. Or if you're looking at the PDF, I mean, you also see it on the screen here, but it looks like this. So we have scarcity, enough, and abundance. And oops, sorry about that. From these terms that you identified, the basic idea is to choose these areas and then rank your satisfaction. Where the inside is that this feels really scarce and that you don't have enough of what you need. And the outside is abundance. You have more than enough, with the middle being enough. Um, no matter what rating you give, then you're also going to give some notes. What's influencing, what's making that more positive or more scarce. And so I have an example here. We're going to take 10 minutes to do this. You can already start on your own while I talk through this example a little bit. And so in my example, we can look at maybe first the work category. So the second quadrant of our pie, or the second slice of our pie. So this person says, well, when I think about my work, I feel pretty good about my work. It's more than enough. I love my team and the projects. I'm using my creativity, and I longed for that for a while. My boss values my input, but I also wish that my salary matched my impact. We could also look at your finances and feel, okay, you have steady income, you don't have debt, you're paying your bills on time, but maybe you don't have an emergency fund and that's dragging you down. And so there's a little bit less than enough in terms of finances. So do this for the 8 terms that you chose, assessing how do those things feel right now? Do you have less than enough, more than enough, or just enough? And what's influencing that? We're about halfway through this exercise now. Make sure you're paying attention to all of the different areas that you wanted to look at, as well as the different facets of what's putting something in the plus column, what's increasing your sense of enough, and what might be dragging it down. Again, noting that our brain has that negativity bias, you might need to place a little bit more emphasis on the positives. So we're coming to the end of this exercise. If that felt like too much time, then you might think about What else could you explore? What answers might you not see that are coming up? And if that didn't feel like enough time, then you can continue like the other exercises to take this away. This is really an opportunity to help you to start to see where you might want to create changes. What's working for you, what's not working for you, and to map those sources of scarcity and abundance. And from there, we can then start to choose to do hard work and make changes. I like to build a break into my courses and my workshops, and we're going to take that break now. So that's going to be a 5 minute break. If you don't feel like you need that break, you're welcome to continue working on any of these exercises. I'm going to stick around here in front of the screen. If you're watching this recording, you can skip ahead 5 minutes. Um, Otherwise, go refill your cup, stretch your legs. A break is really important for the brain. So go step away from the screen and stretch. If you don't feel like you need that, feel free to join me here in the chat. We're going to have 3 more exercises to start defining your future. And this can sometimes be deep, like I said, radical, intensive work. Thanks for those of you who are sharing your LinkedIn profiles in the chat. I'm going to make sure to connect with you after this. I'll go ahead and share mine as well. Would love to have you connect with me. Oftentimes, the richer connection happens when we can exchange with one another a little bit more. I love the specificity with which some of you describe yourselves, where you are in your journey. You're also welcome to ask any questions. We've got a little bit under 2 minutes left in our break. Lovely to meet you, Maria, Yosra, and Esther. See that many of us are at different points in our careers. We've also got a wide spread of languages. We've got Italian, Arabic, French, Hungarian, English. And I think oftentimes that diversity is a rich strength for us to leverage. All right, if you've taken a break, would love to welcome you back to your workstation now. We've also got Mariana here, who have more niches, video games. We've got freelancers, we've got graduates, we've got long-term project managers and translators. And what we've done together so far is we started with really identifying the source that was looking at the past and really figuring out what are we measuring, what are we evaluating, that we named our terms and we created a framework of how we want to assess the past and the present. We looked at the wins, the challenges, we named those different matches. How would the algorithm and the translation memory assess how the past, how the source text looks. And from that, we're going to start bridging into the future. So we're not quite halfway in terms of the exercises that we're going to go through. But the focus of this, of course, is to support you to develop a plan and a vision for the upcoming year. So we're going to spend the remainder of the time. We're calling this transcreating. We're adapting your career to new cultural and technological contexts. The first exercise is going to be page 5 of the PDF. We're calling this the quality assurance metrics. Before we even set the goals, we need to know how are we gonna measure success? That's going to be a tool that supports us to measure the goals. So our 5th page in the PDF looks like this. There's a series of questions that I'm going to walk you through, starting with looking back at this past chapter. Where did you maybe set the bar too high, creating unnecessary stress? Where did you set it too low? Maybe did you miss an opportunity for growth? And in that, you might also identify where did you set it well. We're going to take 3 minutes to do that. I'm going to do it with you. Got my own worksheets here. Looking at the past, this context that you've identified, how would you assess how you set your bar, your standard? So by identifying where we might have set the bar too high, where we might have fallen short, disappointed ourselves, and felt stressed, or where we over exceeded our expectations and maybe didn't challenge ourselves enough, that's going to help us to look forward at the future context. You have some ideas about where you set the bar, and now we want to look at maybe three levels of what the future bar could look like. We're going to have a bit more time. We're going to take 5 minutes to do this one. And I want you to identify a level, what would wow you, what would be amazing, what would exceed your expectations. You can, again, focus on the upcoming year, or you can define how much time you want to be concentrating on. What would be good enough? What would be really satisfactory? And what would be the least that would make this worthwhile? You can pay attention to both inputs, outputs, how you're spending your time, what you're getting, what you're engaging in. Um, this is just setting three different levels of satisfaction. So I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock and invite you to dream and explore. So we still have 2 minutes in this exercise. I want to interrupt you to encourage you to think about those different terms and those different areas of your life that we had on the wheel of life. How can you account for those different areas in your life, in your work, in your dream outcome, in your good enough, in your bare minimum? And then spend the last minute or so, the last 30 seconds, to then think about where do you need to set the bar if you haven't answered that question already. Based on knowing what your dream is, what would be the bare minimum? Where do you need to set the bar? And that likely means lowering it, setting it a little bit less. There's something called the human planning fallacy, which tells us that humans are pretty bad at estimating time, money, resources. So rather than set a really high bar and disappoint yourself, what would be good enough? Where do you need to set the bar? And then there's some questions if you're looking at the PDF. I'll pull those up here. You might ask yourself these questions. If I achieve this, will I feel genuinely satisfied? Is this realistic given my constraints? Am I setting this bar for myself or is it about others? Does this standard that I'm establishing leave room for unexpected challenges? Would I be proud to share this with someone? And this is just kind of an opinion, it's not a rule, but if you would check four of those boxes, then it's probably a strong sign that you've set your bar and your standard for the upcoming year in a good place. So you can continue that exercise on your own if you need more time. But we're really going to shift now into the big task, which has a lot of steps. There's multiple pages in our worksheet. This is the core work of our workshop, looking at the 2026 professional landscape. So we're moving into what I've called transcreation. Again, the metaphor isn't perfect, but this is now our chance to start creating, start inventing, start shifting. There are shifts happening in the industry that we know AI is disrupting workflows, budgets are changing, but we want to look beyond some of those obvious things and also look for new opportunities. Maybe it's a good time to separate your job from your career, what pays your bills versus what stretches you. Maybe it's a new time to define how you personally use AI or how you choose not to use it. So we're going to start with the first set of questions on the worksheet. We're going to have probably 4 minutes for each set of questions here, starting with what shifts are happening, what opportunities are emerging, and what's becoming obsolete or less value. And the key here is that we want to be paying attention to the professional context, the industry. We'll have a moment later for your personal situation, but what's going on in the world around you? That's really what we're asking here. Take about 30 seconds or so to wrap up these questions. You're also welcome to share any of your answers in the chat, especially if you found that you maybe found a special insight. I know one for me is that it's not just in the localization industry, there's a lot of shifts in the whole workforce, in the whole way that the world works. No one probably ever would have thought 10 years ago that people who work with their hands, plumbers, electricians, those kind of people would be more in demand than people with a computer science degree, for example. And that strikes me as a profound emergence of maybe new opportunities. So that was the professional context, the professional landscape. And now, like I mentioned, we're going to take time to look at your personal context. So that's the next set of questions on the worksheet. They're repeated here on the screen. What's going on for you personally? Do you have less energy, different resources this year? Are you caring for aging parents or young children? A good transcreation respects also the constraints of what we're working with. And so, what do you need to consider in your individual context? What do you need to be aware of? What's realistic? What trade-offs? And what might success look like? I'll put 4 more minutes on the clock. And in the last minute, I want to give you a little cheat or a shortcut. You already identified those 8 or so key priorities, what's important to you when we did the quality scorecard, the Wheel of Life. So take a look at that. See how those different factors need to be acknowledged in your personal needs, constraints, trade-offs. And then the next set of questions, moving to the target audience, who needs to see you? Is it a specific type of client? Is it a someone who works in your current organization or potentially a new employer? Um, if you haven't written your own job description yet, now is a great time to be thinking about it. If you were hiring yourself, what would the role be? Think about these kind of questions about who are you trying to reach in the same sense of what are you trying to reach? So now that we've started to aspire a little bit, we've started to name what we might be striving for, what we might be looking for, who, what, what are the circumstances, what's the environment that we're operating in at the moment. Um, there is by definition, when we're stretching and when we're reaching, going to be some gaps and some misalignments. And The next exercise is to really name and identify those. We call this a gap analysis. So to get from your current source context to that target audience, that target outcome, what are some things that might be missing? Are there skills, relationships, confidence? You have some questions here, credentials, visibility. What is, what are you already noticing that's going to be a necessary add or shift or subtraction to get to some of the places you might want to be this year? Go ahead and name those, list them out, and think again about those different categories across your quality scorecard. We've got 4 whole minutes for this exercise as well. Oh. All right. We're going to keep working with these gaps in just a moment. So hopefully you've named at least one, maybe two, three things that feel like they're missing and that they're not quite where you want them to be. We're continuing toward that transcreation. It's a creative adaptation. It's figuring out what do we keep, what do we need to change. Um, and so I want you to start naming. We're moving to the 7th page in our PDF. What needs to be preserved? what really needs to stay, and from these gaps that you named, what needs to change? What specifically needs to change? What will be your adaptation? And I want to highlight more of you have started to share about yourselves in the chat. Um, and oftentimes we recognize a niche, an area that we can perform really well in. And sometimes some parts of those niches and those specializations we want to lean into and double down on. And sometimes we need to adapt and let go of some parts of those. And so this is an opportunity to reflect on that, acknowledging that a lot of this is going to be assumptions that we're going to want to test. We're going to take a few minutes as well for this exercise. It's these two sections here on the worksheet. As you work on your own, if you get a little bit stuck, that's great. When we get stuck, when we're kind of like, I don't know, that's when we can really start to do the work. I'll share an example from my side. So I've started to record meditations that I offer on an app called Insight Timer. Maybe you know it. And I just record my voice. And I think it's a good professional quality, but one of the things that I know is that it could be stronger if it maybe had some other audio and music in the background. And so one thing that I think might need to change would be learning about what's a easy but strong and good quality way to integrate music into my voice and when I create these recordings. And so my adaptation might be taking a short course in that kind of audio editing type of skills, which I know a little bit about, but I don't feel strong enough to do it on my own. So that's part of my transcreation strategy. And now comes a big question. So I want each of us to write a strategy. And you might iterate, you might do several and explore. The first one doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be right. Again, we're letting go of the idea of right and wrong here. Um, Starting with a core value or something that feels pure, that non-negotiable, what needs to be preserved no matter what. So I'm still that. And I'm adapting to what are some of the contexts, the circumstances, either personally and or that professional, that industry context, by what is your adaptation? So that might sound like am still someone who loves language, but I'm adapting to the AI era by becoming an expert in spotting hallucinations and cultural nuance. Or I am still a multilingual expert who thrives on complexity, and I love building communication bridges, gaps, but I'm adapting to how the traditional translation roles have been disrupted by writing my own job description and starting to reach out and solicit business and solicit engagements from companies. I'm starting to hire myself instead of waiting for people to hire me. Just ideas here. Explore on your own. I'm going to set another timer for 4 minutes. Iterate. This is a playground to play with ideas for what could be your trans creation, your strategy looking into this year. Remember, the first one doesn't have to be the right one, even if it sounds, ooh, maybe I'm onto something that's exciting. I would encourage you to stretch yourself, ask what else, go a little bit further. If you feel like you might be onto something, I really want to encourage that this is a space where we feel comfortable to brag, even if it doesn't feel like the final outcome. This might feel like a rough draft. But what does it look like? What does it sound like? One that I came up with would be that I'm still a freelance coach and love with making work work for more people. And I'm adapting to the massive changes in the workforce and the employment world by going to explore different co-working spaces and working environments, making it a little bit of an experiment to go to different places, maybe talk to people, see what it's like to work in those different physical environments. Maybe I could blog about it. That could be an experiment I would do. Would love for maybe one or two of you to share those in the chat. I'm going to move on, but I encourage you to keep typing if you are typing, if you want to share something. We're going to acknowledge that we're finite. We are constrained. We've already talked about some of those constraints. We are human. We have limitations. And so we want to do a little bit of a reality check here. Um, Everything has constraints. And sometimes we also impose unnecessary limits on things that we don't need to limit. And so there's not really an exercise here, but it's just an opportunity to check in once you've identified a little bit of that strategy, some of those ideas. Are those adaptations things that you can actually, that are in your control or your influence? Do they align with what are your priorities? And on the contrary, so that's kind of like, does this measure up to what we need? We also want to allow ourselves the freedom to succeed. Sometimes we might back down from achievements because we feel that we're somehow not quite right for that. And so there's a little bit more information on this next worksheet, which isn't really a worksheet, it's more information here about these ideas. Feeling fundamentally flawed, disloyalty and abandonment, more success, why I might limit myself and not expand into my highest potential. Maybe life will, then people will expect even more of me. I'll have more burdens. Um, Take a moment just to reflect on how these might be relevant, how these might show up for you. It can be different versions of this for all of us. Maybe I'll make someone else look bad if I outshine them. We might be actually holding ourselves back from the possibility of excellence, success, achievement. And in the moments where we achieve those, maybe some of the wins that you already acknowledged for your past year, your past chapter, that's also an opportunity to ground ourselves, to really acknowledge, integrate that win and that success. And that's a way of also kind of rewiring the mindset and saying, actually, I am capable of doing this. I've done it. So I want to invite you, encourage you to, as you explore these strategies, and maybe you continue to explore it on your own time, to both check, is this realistic? Does this align with what you need? And might you be underselling or kind of setting yourself up too short? We want to be reasonable, but we also want to allow ourselves the possibility to shine and to succeed. We are going to do another worksheet, another exercise. Another role in localization is, of course, project management. And this is really where we start to shift into action. So there's a set of questions on the next worksheet. They're here on the screen as well. What would it take to actually bring this into reality? And we're going to break this down by thinking about roughly 90 days from now. So if you're here live, we're in the middle of January. You might be watching this at a different time, but 3 months from now. So middle of April, spring in the northern hemisphere, fall in the southern hemisphere. What would you like about your work or your life to be different? And then, why is that important to you? And why is that important to the world around you? Who could or what resources, what organizations, individuals could help you move forward? Then we're going to break it down by what could you do in the next 3 months, in the next 2 months, in the next 1 month, in the next week. So I want to give you 10 whole minutes to break this down as well. And we're going to do one more check before we close. Take 10 minutes for this one. We still have a few more minutes. I just want to encourage you to break it down. If you're at the last set of questions, what do you need to do in the next 60, 90, 30 days? Get specific with actions or also inactions, non-actions, things that you don't need to do. Who do you need to be? On the question of who could offer help or discussion or ideas, these may be people who are active, present, you're engaged with them regularly. They may also be people who you haven't been in touch with for a while, or you've never been in touch with, but you could take the step to reach out, to connect with them, to ask for a discussion, support, their expertise. The things that you need to do, particularly as you get to the 30 days and this week, start really small. The first thing that I wrote down, I'll share, for example, is this week I will start by just scheduling time. I will set aside time next week for the first step. If your goal is maybe to master I would say that's probably a little bit big and vague. You could instead say, okay, 30 minutes this week or next week, I will test some prompts or I will research the courses. I'll give you 1 more minute to put some finishing touches on what are the first steps toward your transcreation strategy going to look like. All right, folks, we're coming toward the end. We're almost at the end of our exercises and our worksheets. And I really want to acknowledge we've come a long way. You've started to already get very specific in terms of what steps you're going to be taking toward this possible vision. The last invitation is to run a little bit of a final quality control on that plan. Is it realistic given your constraints? If you were setting the bar too high, you might not pass the QA. We set those quality metrics for ourselves before, and so maybe where might you need to bring down the bar a little bit? Just check in with these questions. Are these specific and measurable? Do they align with what you established as your terminology and your priorities? Given what you've identified as your professional and personal context, are they realistic? Do they align with reality? Do you have a definition of what done could look like? And if you don't have these all yes at the moment, that's okay. These are just some things to refine and work toward as you continue to work on your plan on your own. You might also ask what could be a potential unforeseen failure where this plan might not succeed, And how, if that failure would happen, how might you mitigate it? How might you overcome that failure or even prevent it from occurring? And the last question, what are you waiting for? There's a strong chance that you might be waiting for the right moment. Now is not the right time. And if that answer is coming up for you, I want to remind you that oftentimes humans, we're afraid. A lot of us in the world operate with fear. And you might want to measure how much it's costing you not to act and the actual, if you're afraid of failing, how likely is that failure to happen? And you could probably recover from that failure. And so if you're waiting to start, what's going to encourage you to stop waiting and actually make steps forward? We have gone on quite a journey together. We analyzed that past, your source material. We audited the present. We also created this new vision, this transcreation strategy for the future. And with that, we're coming toward a close. And now I want to have a check out in the same format that we arrived and checked in. So we're going to go back to Mentimeter. And I would love to hear some ideas of what shifted in your thoughts about your career. We're going to go to the next slide. And I think this answer, I was accidentally on the first slide at the beginning, but go ahead and either scan this QR code or go back to menti.com and input the code 87670698. You may not be able to participate if you're watching the recording. But at least we can explore and understand what are some of the shifts that have showed up. Maybe you can name a new idea, hard work. At least I think that's what this says here. I can hide that QR code. There we go. Hard work. Maybe some emphasis on the hard work. For me, one that I would add, it would be noticing that sometimes I might be the one holding myself back, that I make assumptions. There's quite a lot of assumptions showing up for me. Uncertainty is becoming a theme again. It's actually achievable. Maybe when we break it down, or maybe when we take different perspectives and shift it, noticing that it's achievable. Positive mindset. There's some light coming in. Long road. Indeed, a career is a multi-decade journey usually. So it is often a long road, and we need to take breaks and we need to take it in chunks. We have the word focused, flexibility, adapting. That long road is not just a straight line from A to B. We might need to take some turns, some twists, and those are not necessarily steps back. Those can also be shifts up. Sometimes if we take another road, it might be a shortcut. Hopefully this will allow people to continue answering, but this is where we started. Change, movement, stagnation, the unknown, the mindset. And this is where we are at the moment. So I think that there definitely have been some shifts. I want to go back to our presentation as we close. So I want to give a special thanks to TranslaStars for giving all of us the time and space to support your professional development plan. You don't have to do this alone, and TranslaStars is a huge community. If you haven't seen their recent posts celebrating some of the growth in 2025, this is a wonderful community to be a part of. And if learning is part of your development plan for 2026, I would encourage you to keep in touch with TranslaStars. I also saw something that people can now start teaching and offering their own courses on TranslateStars. So it doesn't have to be just about learning. Um, I'll also give a short side note that if you feel like the AI disruption in your career has been prominent at the moment, I am going to be giving a TranslateStars course on that in February. I think it's the 10th and 11th. It's called Navigating AI to Reclaim Your Localization Career. And we're going to dive a lot more into the facts and stories theme there. I have one last request for those of you who are here. You should be able to use this if you're watching the recording as well. You can either scan this QR code or go to that link, which I'll drop in the chat as well. And this is just a chance for you to give me feedback. I appreciate that you showed up here for yourself, and I would love to know what you thought of this course. So you can jump there. Only one of the questions is required, and that's just assigning a number. Everything else is optional, and I would love to hear whatever resonates with you and whatever you feel like sharing. My inbox is also open. You can reach me by email, LinkedIn, Instagram, through my website, anjoy.coach. I'll be happy to stick around for a Q&A. I'll probably end the recording, but I want to really thank you for doing this work for yourself, for showing up. Like I said, it might be a little bit radical to pause in a moment like this and plan. Um, but I like to remind you that knowing what you're aiming for tremendously improves your odds of getting there. And I want to honor you and wish you a wonderful start or continuation to the year 2026. I'll leave you with this quote that if we change the nature of work, we change the nature of life. And so it can be worth exploring and improving our relationship to work. Thank you all for your time. I'm going to stick around if anyone wants to jump in, but I'm going to end the recording here